During the war, Nazi engineers were known for their eccentric projects and lethal wonder weapons, some of which, had they been completed, could have changed the course of the war in Germany's favor. These projects pandered to one of Hitler's most persistent obsessions: tanks. In his quest to cover the world in an unstoppable blitzkrieg, the Führer ordered the development of some of the mightiest monster tanks ever imagined. Most of them would never see the light of day, but one of his most implausible war machines was actually built as large as a house. It was the heaviest armored fighting vehicle ever seen at the time. Hitler himself commissioned its construction with one objective in mind. It was to be an indestructible tank. For this purpose, it was fitted with the broadest armor ever mounted on a land vehicle. Its 9-inch thickness surpassed that of many battleships at the time. General Heinz Guderian, the mastermind behind the Blitzkrieg during the invasions of Poland and France, called its design grandiose. At the same time, Hitler considered the 200-ton tank key to his plans of subduing the Soviets. As the war progressed and the Soviets started to regain ground on the Eastern Front, Hitler remained hopeful. In his mind, completing the Maus project would bring a massive and unexpected upturn in the East. No Soviet effort would be able to stand between a rampaging Maus and the gates of Moscow. In 1939, most armored combat vehicles were fitted with armors no more than 1.2 inches thick. Then by 1945, most tanks used armor plates as wide as 2.3 inches. The light tanks used during the start of the conflict soon became obsolete, as these were highly vulnerable to the new anti-tank cannons being developed worldwide. Nazi Germany had written the book on modern tank warfare and was not ready to abandon its greatest strength anytime soon. So began Hitler's quest to build the heaviest, most devastating tank ever conceived. Designing the impossible. The inception of the Maus's unique design took place in 1942 when Porsche were commissioned. Porsche's engineers, eager to please Hitler, went above and beyond when outlining the design. When schematics were ready, they showcased a 200-ton machine. Armor plates ranging from 7 to 10 inches thick made the conceptual tank almost impenetrable by any weapon used at the time. Hitler personally reviewed the plans, and he was pleased by the results, approving the construction of a prototype to be ready as soon as possible. The main issue with designing such a heavy tank was the power source. The Maus needed an engine powerful enough to move the 200-ton contraption. A first attempt was made using an adapted version of Germany's most considerable displacement V-12 aircraft engine, the Daimler-Benz MB-509. When that motor failed to produce the minimum required threading speeds, it was switched for a Daimler-Benz MB-517 diesel engine. Such a decision meant that over 2/3 of the inside of the hull was occupied by the enormous engine and its company, an electrical generator. The space left for the pilot, gunners, and the rest of the communications and control equipment was drastically reduced. Weapons-wise, the Maus was meant to utilize a huge 150mm cannon mounted on its turret. Ultimately, on Hitler's direct instructions, the tank was fitted with a 128mm main gun. In May of 1943, a wooden mock-up of the Maus was presented to Hitler. This version was intended to weigh 188 tons. Hitler was very impressed, and after asking for some additional modifications, the now 200-ton vehicle was approved for mass production, starting with an order of 150 units. The plan was to have the tanks ready before the end of 1943. He was sure a machine this mighty and robust would aid his armies in the East. Destiny, however, had other plans, as the continuous testing of the Mouse's first unit produced more and more setbacks for the tank's production cycle. The Mouse was just too heavy for its own good, and the primary drawback of its load was its mediocre speeds. Logistically, the super heavy tank was a nightmare. If Germany planned to use it during the war, it would have to build unique railroad tracks and massively reinforced flat cars to transport it to the battlefield, where it was needed. Even if against all odds, the Mouse made it to the battlefield, it still had many disadvantages that had to be addressed. After all the modifications to its colossal engine, the tank could only achieve a top speed of barely 12 miles per hour, far less than any other tank in active service. In addition, due to its massive engine, astronomical weight, and reduced space, the Mouse could only hold enough fuel to travel for a mere 3 hours. Germany would have to construct unprecedented supply lines if it wanted to refuel its super tanks on a regular basis. Ultimately, Hitler's dream of an indestructible tank capable of blowing any other tanks to bits would be almost impossible to accomplish if said vehicle could not keep up with its enemy counterparts. The production of the Mouse was delayed time and time again to try to fix many of these issues. However, by 1944, Nazi Germany was running out of supplies, oil, men, and money. The dream of taking the super tank into the Eastern Front suddenly seemed impossible. Germany had failed at Stalingrad, the Soviets were advancing towards German territory, Allied forces had liberated France, and the fate of the war was to be sealed. Hitler then ordered a complete halt on the project, with only 2 units ever built. Months later, Soviet soldiers would capture these 2 tanks during their invasion of Germany, and they were taken back to their country for research. The heaviest tanks ever built never saw a day in battle. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Please like and subscribe, and you can also now support us on our Patreon page. See you next time.